Let's make it happen. This is Chris Bryan, PhD. Cheers. All right. How'd everyone like that? I just put out my new video, Alex O'Connor cooking our cooks. Gonna go and share that on Reddit quickly. That'll be an interesting one to see the reaction to. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised to find some disagreement from some vegans on this issue. I really want to get Alex to talk to FarmKind. The Dwakesh Patel thing saved about 1 million animals. Well, in fact, more, because he did a match, so at least 2 million. And there was a bunch of other CEOs who weighed in with similar matches, so I think the total raised in that case ended up being $2.2 million at 4 animals a dollar. We're talking about nearly 10 million animals. And Alex O'Connor, I feel like he must have a few quid. And I feel like his audience would be up for it. So we'll see. We'll see if we'll see what happens. Right, let me post this video to Reddit real quick. They either love or hate my videos over there. We'll see. We'll see which way it goes this time. Looks like we've got. I'll post this and we'll see if it catches on while I'm streaming. Hopefully so. Ex-vegan Alex O'Connor promotes animal charity. Is he cooking or is he cooked? I like that format. I like that phrase. I'm gonna do more of those for sure. It's a good, like, evaluate the take title, isn't it? Right. What do we got here? Looks like a new target for the Humane League Fast Action Network. Campaign launch, corporate crackdown. It's time for a crackdown. Are you ready to release 700,000 plus hens from cages? Hell yeah. Our new campaign, Corporate Crackdown, launches on September 16th, and we need you to make your voice heard. Let's do it, guys. Choice Hotels and Radisson Hotel Group promise to be 100% cage-free by the end of 2025, but they've made little to no progress and are backing down from their commitment. We're not going to have that. Demand that Choice and Radisson take their commitment seriously and publish a clear plan for reaching 100% cage-free globally. Alright, let's do it. We got a few Best Western things on here still. Here's Radisson and Choice. Here's Radisson email. Contact form for Choice Hotels. Okay, this is quite fun because this is the first start of a Humane League Fast Action Network campaign that we've seen. We saw our first successful conclusion of a campaign against Subway just last week. And here we are, September 16th. Radisson and Choice are about to be the next ones. Let's see how fast we can get them to switch. Am I going to write my name here? Okay. Love to know what you think of the Alex O'Connor video, if you guys saw that. I just dropped it. Alex O'Connor cooking or cooked. Been having some conversations about the difference between veganism and activism, and yeah, I think I've explored the ethics on that enough to finally say something about Alex O'Connor, so be interested to see how it goes down. Yeah, true, Oppenheimer. We need to get our own Vegan 2.0 fast action network for spreading the word. This is a new Best Western one. I can never find... Oh, I've already reviewed this. I guess I'm clicking done because I have already done it. I can edit my review. Send an email to Radisson's customer care team. Let's go. What was confusing, Tone? Not sure on the conclusion of the video, or... I think for me it really depends if he's actually donating. He sort of mentions it in the podcast, but he doesn't really say that he's doing it, and I feel like he would say that if he was. We'll see if he gets baited into doing it. That'd be cool if so. I mean, I say that like it's trick or dishonest or something. Like it would just save millions of animals. So, right, what are we doing here? Send to customer care at Radisson Hotels. Good. Done. Submit a contact form to Choice Hotels customer support. So this is the new hotel chain that we're starting a campaign against today. Don't need this. What should I put? Hotel feedback. Reservation details. Do I have to fill it in? Okay, let's just do this. If they give me something to type. Oh yeah, here we go. Damn, I can't believe that's an invalid confirmation number. Let's try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, X. Nailed it. Okay. Hacker music plays. I'm in. Alright, Choice Hotels again. What's this one? Send an email to their media relations. Man, you have to think, this is the first day we're doing this, and we've done now 4 different lines of attack for Choice Hotels. Oh, it looks like we've completed this already. You have to think there must be quite an impact on a business when they suddenly all of their channels are flooded with people talking about their backing off their cage-free commitments. There's going to be more and more of this. This will go on for weeks, so it has to. This is quite cool. This is the first start of one of these campaigns that we've seen. We saw the successful conclusion of the Subway campaign the other week. Nice. Okay, cool. Well, I am going to resume the debate that we got most of the way through yesterday between Paul Bashir and Tobias Leonard. We've got some stuff that we might read later. But yeah, let's take a look.
I obviously agree with you that this is the biggest horror and moral crisis of our time and ever, and it's huge in scope. Um, and maybe this can make my point clear a little bit. I think that so this is horrible. Many people agree it's horrible, especially factory farming, and still there's no big groups of people taking to the streets to protest this. And I think one of the reasons for this is that almost everybody is complicit. And are you
Hang
still
on a
hearing me?
second. Sorry, Tobias, are you talking about? Yes. Did you just say that no one's taken to the streets to protest factory farming?
Not massively in droves in the millions. I mean, like climate change, we never had a march that comes even close to the size of a climate change march for animal rights, for against animals.
Paul's about to kick off there. I guess that's probably true that there hasn't been one on the same scale as the climate movement. And yeah, that is when you think about, again, in detail what's involved, factory farming, the scale of it, the obvious wrongness of it, it is on some level surprising.
Suffering, right? And that is because people are very complicit in it. And I just want to make the comparison with slavery.
How's my levels? Oh, that's about right, actually, isn't it?
Slavery ended with a war between the North and the South. And the North people were much more against slavery. And why was that? Why was there this split between North and South? It was
In America,
because,
you're talking about here, right? Specifically.
yeah, in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very simply because the climate in the South is a lot hotter and they could do certain crops there like tobacco and rice and sugar and cotton. And these required a lot of labor and they used slave labor for that. And so, again, this is an example of where you stand depends on where you sit. People needed slaves, they were using slaves, and they were therefore were approving of slavery. And in the North, they were much more against slavery, and the North won in the end. So this is just to show that this dependence and this ingrainedness of our use of animal products is prohibitive against our understanding the things that are at stake here. And that just makes it more difficult to reach people. And therefore, I think we can reach people in different ways that are not necessarily only the way that you suggest.
Yeah, I think again this is sort of a misrepresentation of my position. My position, just to clarify, is that the most effective approach during outreach interactions is to give them a clear, direct, truthful messages that sits on three principles: one, holding them accountable; two, putting them in the victim's position; and three, a call to action that they must change right now. That this isn't just food for thought.
Yeah,
And so I'm saying that's the most effective outreach approach.
I understand that.
Okay, that's my position. I'm not saying
I do like that he has a very clear, easy to remember 1, 2, 3 thing that he can rattle off like that. That it comes from, many years of developing this and then kind of formalizing it so that it can be taught to others. It's very important to be able to communicate in a pithy way like that. That's why I always say give more, share more, do more, and every Vegan 2.0 video has that same structure. It makes it kind of easy to remember what are the 3 things that are parts of Vegan 2.0. And is having those kind of slogans obviously very helpful.
that other outreach approaches shouldn't exist at all. I am saying, however, that it makes it harder for our work when you're out there promoting a reducitarian message. I keep coming back to this, but I don't know how you're arriving at this conclusion that we don't have enough reducitarian messages in the movement. The predominant approach in the vegan movement is a reducitarian message and has been for many, many years now. I just don't know how you're arriving at this conclusion. Can you help me to understand that?
Yeah, I really don't know how we can be sure of that. I would agree that since maybe 10, 15 years, we've done more of that. I would say that the movement, I would call it, has become more pragmatic in that sense. But it's hard to estimate. I would say, I mean, animal rights organizations often give a go vegan message, an all or nothing message. Vegetarian vegan organizations, less so, like ProVeg does not give that message. But then there's the whole, apart from the professional organizations, there's the grassroots and there's all the YouTube and online activists. I see a lot of, go vegan messaging there. So I'm not sure. You could be right. I really don't know if we could say that by far reducitarian messaging
All right.
is the majority.
I don't know how you could see anything else that's happening in the movement in terms of organizations. They may be saying go vegan in some things they say, but I would say, okay, here's an indication of the problem that I'm trying to describe to you. On the streets, people who identify as vegan, when they tell us that, we actually now have a clear protocol on how to communicate with those people. One of the first questions we ask them, if not the first question, is, do you know what the original definition of veganism is? And even if people say yes, 99% of the time, and I'm not exaggerating at all, they do not understand what veganism actually is. Okay? They usually say something along the lines of, it means you don't eat
Yeah, it is, Mel. Yeah.
meat, dairy, and eggs, and things like that. So they
I can definitely see from Paul's perspective that it's frustrating, right? The way that he's coming at it is almost like the accountability thing is lost when somebody else is offering discount accountability, right? Come and get your accountability over here. It's cheaper, you only have to go flexitarian. From Paul's perspective, when he's doing his vegan advocacy, obviously that's undercutting, right? Because it can, yeah, why are you going to take the harder route if you can get the same level of approval? Hey Esma, how are you doing? If you can get the same level of approval by doing something much easier. Yeah, I mean, it's like if you're trying to sell whatever, research services, right? And somebody out there is selling research services for a far cheap price. You're thinking, well, this is undercutting me. This is making it harder for me to sell my thing. Oh yeah, Esma, what did you think? Cooking or cooked? But then obviously from Tobias's perspective, I can see he's really talking about more at like a societal and an institutional level, where in many cases, incrementalism is the only option, and if you give a very high ask or nothing situation, maybe you'll get nothing. Now Paul said maybe if you give a very high ask or nothing, the person ends up sort of negotiating themselves to something. So I don't know. On some level, I think they're somewhat talking past each other because they're talking about slightly different things. I agree with a lot of what's been said on both sides. We'll see where it goes. I have to say, Paul's impressed me in this conversation. I know Tobias. He's a friend of mine and very much my cup of tea when it comes to thinking about animal advocacy. Very pragmatic and so on. But I have to say, Paul is, he's argued well in this conversation.
literally think it's a diet, and yeah, they might say it's got something to do with animals. It's out of concern for animals in some way. They may say
The thing is, from Tobias's perspective, Paul has said things like, what did he say? Like something about circumventing, getting people to actually respect animals. To which I would always think that's not the ultimate end goal. If you can get people to stop eating animals without having to negotiate that, for example, in the case of cultivated meat, then you can kind of circumvent that, and that's fine. But yeah, in most cases, and especially again if you're in the mindset of the person on the street doing the activism and having the conversations, that's a slightly different mindset, right?
say that, but they don't truly understand.
Thanks, Esmar. I'm glad you think so. Yeah, I just posted on the vegan subreddit, so we'll see if I get cooked over there.
And the severity and the urgency
Hey Nilf, welcome back. Good to see you.
of this. They think it's okay to not be vegan. They think it's just a personal choice. Most of the people that we talk to that are vegan. So this means that people who have gotten a go vegan message, generally speaking, I don't think have actually been given a vegan message. I think it's very important that we align if we're saying we're both vegans and that we're both interested in the same thing, ending this injustice and creating a world of justice for animals and ending human supremacy. If we're on the same page about that, then we need to be on the same page about the definition of veganism. Because if we have different definitions, then yeah, I can understand why we are having this disagreement, but I think it might be easily resolved by that, or at least significantly improved.
Mm-hmm.
That we're on the same page about what veganism actually.
Oh damn, new vid's doing well. Look at this thing that it shows you. Little leaderboard there. Next best video after this amount of time had 9 views, and the Alex O'Connor video is on 24. I think that's going to do very well.
Actually means, because that's what we're trying to communicate to non-vegans and to fellow vegans at the end of the day.
I think we both understand we have the same understanding of it. I'm just not so hung up on the definition of veganism and on veganism itself. Like David said at the beginning, it's a road to an end. It's not the end itself. Or you might say it's the end itself. I mean, the end for me is the end of animal exploitation and animal suffering. And I think there's like a huge emphasis and focus and almost fetishization of this vegan concept. And it's just not, that concept is not just the only way to get people to where we want. I see people getting so nervous about like, oh, this has to be so clear. And people say to me that I'm watering down the idea of veganism and all of that. I'm really like not very concerned with that thing that so many people are so obsessed with, which is like the clarity of the vegan message. The clarity is like, yeah, it's one aspect of the vegan message, but there's also other aspects like the palatability of it, the accessibility of it. And this is not pandering. This is just making sure that people do something. And I think that, again, in as far as you can identify the people who are open to that message, great. I just want to reach the other people as well. And saying that like, yeah, the ones who are not ready, I think that's kind of lame. We can do a lot better than that. We can really find ways to reach people who, in your view, are not ready for your message, right? We can find people who can take steps for health reasons,
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to like a market segregation kind of exercise, basically. And we do this kind of thing in surveys where we're looking at the Meat Shame survey yesterday, where we have the what do we call them? Meat shame havers, meat shame resistors. And, it's typically like much more men than women in the meat shame resistors, older people, right? And there is basically a group of people for whom Paul's vegan message is the most compelling. And, you know, we looked at that article the other day that I wrote about how the animal-centered message tends to perform better in experiments and so on. But there is going to also be another group of people for whom the best message is, reducing due to health, and then that way you can get some tractable progress out of them and reduce some animal deaths, rather than kind of getting nothing, as you might with trying a vegan message on those people. So I think it has to be about segregation, market segregation, exercise, right? And then also we're looking at the diffusion of innovation curve, where you have the early adopters and then the majority who adopted and the laggards at the end. One of the dynamics going on there is that there's kind of social pressure increasing on the decreasing number of people who haven't yet adopted it, and so moving people along that curve is again an approach for the incrementalists. Some people are ready to go all the way, and
or environmental reasons. We can find people who can take steps for no reason at all, and all these steps can lead to other steps. That is, I mean, research is pretty clear that like a lot.
Yeah, that's funny you say that, Nuff. I mean, to be honest, I'm more sympathetic to Paul's view in this debate than I kind of expected to be. I do think they're talking about slightly different things. I mean, I think Tobias is onto it when he's talking about like institutional messaging and certain demographics. But yeah, that's in this debate, Paul brought up a study which was smokers randomly allocated to either stop smoking now or gradually stop smoking, and they found that the people who were allocated to stop smoking now were more likely to follow through and still be not smoking in 6 months' time. So that was quite a good good bit of empirical evidence for his kind of, go straight there method, which I enjoyed.
At the times, and to go back to that tobacco example might be true, I don't know, but we're talking about physical addiction there, which is still a different thing than what we are talking about here. But research is pretty clear that change happens very often in steps from one to the next. And you could say that like, okay, I don't appreciate this one step. You don't get a handshake from me when you're just going to do one thing. I'm just seeing it differently, and I'm seeing like, okay, all these people are moving. And when you say that I make your work more difficult, again, it could be true, but again, that's hard to prove, because what we're doing with Reducitarian asks is, again, increasing supply and demand. And you can reach people much easier if they have the impression that there's enough alternatives around. Every one of us may think that we got in there for moral reasons alone, but of course, how easily we got in there is determined to a large extent by our perception of how difficult it is in practice.
Yeah, I have to say I have really, to be honest, only been vegan since it's been pretty bloody easy to be vegan in the UK. I went vegan in 2020, and by then, is that the year that the Greg sausage roll came out? I'm pretty sure it was the year that vegan Burger King came out. I mean, I was vegetarian before that for a few years, but yeah, for me, at this point about having good alternatives, it really resonates, because, like I say, I eat a ton of that stuff, and yeah, it's made it trivially easy to be vegan, frankly. And a lot of my mates who are blokes who love eating meat and so on, it's good to give them exposure to this stuff, and a lot of them have become vegetarian now, right? So I think that's definitely a case for moving people in this direction so that it supports the alternatives, and makes it subsequently easier. Spicer has a thing that he says in his book about what is it, gluten-free people and celiacs, and how some people have celiacs are will kind of look sideways at people who are doing sort of fashionable gluten-free diets, and might say things like, you know, it makes it difficult for us to order in restaurants because people, you know, waiters don't necessarily take it seriously and they think we're just doing gluten-free. It's actually dangerous for us, right? And Tobias says, well, there's a ton of gluten-free options now. And that might not be the case if that was only catering to like the 2 or 3% of people who are celiacs. But since there's a bunch of people who are not celiac but still want to get gluten-free stuff, it makes it easier for all the celiac people to have gluten-free stuff available as well. So it's a similar sort of thing.
I'll let you talk.
Well, I mean, I disagree.
Yeah, good question, Osmar. Let me bring... You know what? I'm going to do my little welfareism slides again, because I did this the other day, but I think it bears repeating. To this one? No. Let me play this while I look for it.
Agree. You know, I generally eat fruit. So I never needed meat replacements and cheese replacements and egg replacements. You know, this kind of shit actually bothers me, that we focus so much on alternatives. I literally think that people are ready to eat fruits and vegetables and eat basic plant-based foods, which is healthier for you anyway.
So here's the thing with the welfareism. And apologies to people who saw me doing this the other day. I'll do it quite quickly. Oh, move myself out of the way. So this is the supply and demand curve, right? When the price is very low, you have a very high demand. Lots of people want to buy it 'cause it's very cheap. When the price is very high, you have very low quantity demanded. Nobody wants to buy it 'cause it's very expensive. Supply curve goes the other way, right? When the price is very high, there's a high quantity of supply because it's very profitable. Everyone wants to sell the thing. When the price is very low, low quantity of supply because there's not much money to be made, right? So this is supply and demand curve, and then in the middle you have the equilibrium. This determines the price and the quantity of the thing produced. So if we think about animal advocacy, normally in vegan advocacy, what we're doing is trying to push down the supply curve, push down the demand curve, so that at any given price, there's a lower number of people buying the thing than there would have otherwise been, right? And the reason why we're trying to do that is because then it produces a new equilibrium here where the quantity is lower than the quantity before. Right, so we push down this demand curve by getting people to go vegan, and now the quantity has reduced from here to here. So that equates to animals saved, right? So in the case of supply side interventions like doing welfare, mandatory welfare standards or other kind of standards, we're pushing up the supply curve. So we're saying at any given quantity of chickens that you're going to produce, it's actually going to be more expensive to do so because you have to give them more space or whatever it might be. And similarly, right, when we push up that supply curve by having animal welfare standards, again, we are creating a new equilibrium where the quantity of chickens produced is lower than it was before. So this is the key thing a lot of people miss about welfare standards. The main point of them is not necessarily, if you're an abolitionist, the main point of them is not necessarily the better welfare standards for the animals which are still farmed, but actually a lower number of animals being farmed overall, right? And we can see on this graph, it has a similar effect in terms of quantity to people going vegan. In both cases, pushing down the demand curve or pushing up the supply curve, we're reducing the quantity. So that is what I have to say about welfare reforms and such. But also on that point, Esmar, I actually looked into this a little bit, and it looks like the Humane League is pretty much amongst the best charities to give to for both approaches, because they certainly do the supply side sort of welfare campaigns and stuff, but they're also very effective in their vegan campaigns that they do. And actually, I was surprised the numbers are pretty similar. We read that thing from Animal Ask, which estimated 3.7 animals to the dollar. by digital and mass media campaigns if they're done effectively. And on the supply side stuff, I think we're estimating like 4.4 animals to the dollar. So it's pretty close, honestly. And if there will be a lot of people who are just not really that comfortable with doing the supply side stuff, the welfare campaigns and so on. I mean, I think you should do both, right? But yeah, to the extent that people are like just want to sponsor Go Vegan campaigns, then yeah, the Humane League looks like a pretty good option for that as well.
If they understand the moral obligation to do so. Like, I think that
What's up, Vegan? I saw. Good to see you.
there's this kind of air of like, oh, people are like not going to get it, so we have to
Hi, Poe.
say it like this to them. Like, I think we can speak to people's intelligence and we can speak to their character and assume they can understand that they should change right now. And yeah, and again, I'm not saying that like,
Yeah, Poe, the three, well, two resources that I recommend. One is the Fast Action Network, and they've just launched a new campaign. They've also just won a campaign against Subway. They're now going to be doing cage-free eggs, better conditions for those chickens and fewer chickens farmed overall. And they've just launched a new campaign against a couple of hotel chains, so we've been doing that. The other resource that I recommend is Animal Charity Evaluators, as they have recommendations for the most bang for your buck for donating to effective animal charities. So those are two things to get you started. And the other part, so Vegan 2.0 is Give More, Share More, Do More, right? The Give More is Animal Charity Evaluators, and the Do More is the Humane League Fast Action Network here. The Share More, we've been doing a different thing each week. Honestly, normally what I do is just search on Google News for both vegan and meat, and sometimes plant-based or factory farming or different terms. Find like some relatively recent news story that is positive for veganism, right? And when people see it on social media, we'll give them a positive impression, and then yeah, share that with some commentary. But yeah, the Vegan 2.0 series is a good place to start if you're looking for effective activism. Yeah, talking to people advocacy can be hard because all sorts of psychology that I've made videos about. Maybe we'll watch one of them later, actually. I have a good video called How to Get Someone to Go Vegan that goes through the steps of behavior change and sort of tools that you can use at each stage. We'll give that a watch after this debate.
Plant-based organizations out there, nutritional activists, if you want to call them that, or environmental activists who are promoting a plant-based message shouldn't be doing that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that people like you who identify as a vegan activist, you said you've been vegan activist for 25 years now, you should be promoting a clear vegan message, in my opinion. And it's okay for us to criticize each other's ideas, right? This doesn't mean I'm being mean to you by saying this, right? I think that you should be promoting a clear vegan message because you know the truth. You know what people should be doing. These plant-based groups trying to get people to eat more lentils, they don't care about anything other than human rights.
So
human health is a human right.
I would promote a clear vegan message in the cases where I think that's the most effective thing I can do for animals. That is not always the case. So I'm not hooked up on that.
Yes, but again, this is why I started off with this conversation.
Framework
I clearly
and some
asked the
useful tools for
question,
getting
are you
somebody-
saying
Whoops.
that it's more effective for you to promote what you're doing?
In some cases, not
During
always.
outreach
I mean,
interactions.
I might speak, let's say,
What do you think is more effective? What is, because I'm married to what is most effective.
me too.
And this isn't because I'm fed
That's a nice moment in the debate. I think that sums it up so far, right? They both really are having maximalist mindset with respect to being effective. And again, I have to say, pleasantly surprised by Paul's views in this debate. He's talked about being effective more than I anticipated. He has kind of more data than I expected. He said he spoke to over 30,000 people. Yeah, so I really like that moment in this debate, though. They both just said, I'm married to what's most effective, and Tobias said, me too. I think if I were to answer this question, I would say, message, overcome cruelty in society. This is the article that we looked at last time, where I have all the table of all the studies that tend to show animal messages, sort of convincing more people and so on. But most of these are finding in favour of animal messages. It's not that clear with the dark screen. Let me get rid of that. There you go. So most of these are finding in favour of the animal messages being most effective, but it does vary for different. It will vary for different demographics, and there will be groups for whom an animal message is just not going to go through. I mean, you see some of them, right? Coming up and interacting with the vegans on some of these videos, and there's just no, you know, you might have a chance of getting these people to cut their meat consumption in half by talking about the health benefits, but you're just not going to get anywhere with the animal message for some people. I do think on aggregate the animal message is the best, and certainly if you're trying to do a scalable thing where you're training a bunch of other people to do sort of run through the script, you do want it to be pretty simple and straightforward and consistent. And so given that, you know, this would be the one message if I had to choose one, but I guess what I would say is it depends, right?
Fetishizing the definition of veganism. This is because I'm addicted, I'm obsessed with justice for the animals because they're the most victimized on the planet.
I love that word obsessed as well. I feel like I'm obsessed with doing this. It feels like a positive thing, though. It feels like being invigorated and feeling energized to go after a goal and improve some outcome. I think being obsessed with reducing suffering or obsessed with justice, as Paul said here, is not a bad thing at all.
I want that to happen more than anything else that I want in my life. So my question to you is, in terms of outreach interactions with others, what do you think the most effective approach is?
I think there's no one most effective approach. I think that being flexible, trying to see what can get the person to move is what's important. And that is not always, I mean, you say yourself, I mean, I don't understand. You say yourself that you will only get a certain amount of people with that message. So either you get them or you don't get them. And if you can't get them with that message, you give up on them. That's just not my approach. I think that
No, I'm saying if they're not listening and they're not willing to change, that changing the message to, well, just reduce then. Will you at least cut out meat 3 times a week? Even if they say yes to that, you've now given them, like, that not only seems ineffective to me, but it seems counterproductive.
So would you agree that going vegan is easier today than it was 20 years ago because of all the options that we have?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that I don't think we necessarily needed it
well,
to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
I think we need loads more of it. You've got the push and the pull factors. I mean, you know, these two theories of change are not in competition with each other. They're definitely complementary, right? The alternative proteins complement the animal activism, and the animal activism complements the alternative proteins if it's done in harmony, right? Here's an alternative to animal products. Here's a bunch of reasons why you shouldn't eat animal products. It can't necessarily be the same people delivering each of those push and pull messages. In some contexts it can be, but you know, for example, meat alternative companies are often kind of nervous to be seen to be doing too preachy messaging or whatever, so they're not necessarily going to do, you know, go hard on the animal message. Although you do see some of them putting it, there's a Quorn advert with little sort of hand puppet animals, and they made it about not eating the animals. I'm sure there's been other meat alternative adverts where they do that kind of thing as well. But yeah, the point is that the push and the pull are both going in the same direction. So they're very much complementary strategies.
What to say? I mean, I think that we do. I think that like if the chicken nugget is one of the most eaten products, consumed products in the world, it's good to make an alternative to the chicken nugget, and rather than
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. I've never once protested against these plant-based
but
alternatives.
you're saying it's not.
I'm just saying I don't see. I do see that perspective. I just don't see that it's. There's also downsides to this. There's also downsides to creating vegan chicken nuggets, which is that when people switch to vegan chicken nuggets and they think they're going to be super healthy because all of these plant-based messages say you're going to be much healthier, and they still experience cholesterol issues, and they still experience heart issues and weight issues.
I would be pushing back on this. Again, this is a hot button topic for me. Meat alternatives are healthier than meat. They might not be as healthy as vegetables, but they're healthier than meat, and they're meat alternatives, right? They are meant to be replacing meat, and so that's the relevant comparison. In the UK, the NHS funds in some regions vapes. You can get an NHS-funded vape if you're trying to quit smoking, because vaping is healthier than smoking. Now, it doesn't mean that it's healthier than not smoking at all, right? But it's a move in the right direction. I'm not sure if I really want to be equivalencing those products to vapes, but you know what I mean. The relevant comparison has to be to compare to eating meat. And again, if you're a vegan talking about this issue, it kind of won't be, because you'll be thinking, well, compared to my current diet, which is, whole food plant-based, then, on some metrics it can be less healthy. But they are way, way healthier than the meat products that they replace. Lower levels of fat, lower levels of saturated fat, higher levels of fiber, lower levels of calorie density. All the things that he's talking about in terms of heart disease and so on, these are going to be massively reduced by meat alternatives compared to meat products.
And cancer issues.
Hey, Kerry, good to see you.
That, this ends up backfiring. And then when they do get a clear vegan message, they're going to be, oh, I tried it. I already tried it. It didn't work for me. It didn't work for my health. And we get that a lot, by the way. We get that too many times.
There's definitely disadvantages to the chicken nugget, and what you say about health, that's true. I think that just the advantages, the benefits are bigger than the downsides, because if you don't have them and you have to tell people like, look, now switch to a diet of fruits and vegetables and chickpeas and whatever and beans, I think it's gonna go slower again. And this is just, I mean, this is what I call being realistic, basically.
I don't tell people how to eat, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, just saying.
I just want to clarify that. I don't even talk about how to be vegan. Yeah. Like, if you see me talking about that during my outreach interactions, that's like 5% of the interaction.
Yeah, sure. Just saying that, like, it will be easier with the chicken nugget, and the chicken nugget is there and can be consumed by people because a lot of people are reducing. Well,
Tobias, let's do one thing. Give us. Sorry, man. I just want to try and like get into the bottom of this. Give me 3 examples. Give me one example where what Paul's saying, his strategy, you think it will work. Give me another example where you think a reduction strategy will work, and then give me a third example where you think that actually, potentially, as a thought experiment, however you want to put it, that actually using or consuming something non-vegan would work in all 3 cases where it benefits animals in the long run, like as in like they all lead us to a better world for animals. Maybe that'll help to kind of get to the bottom of what you're saying.
Tough one. Yeah, David mentioned at the start of this debate that Tobias had said in some cases it could benefit animals to consume animal products. I think Tobias, clarified there's not really a main part of his theory of change. It's just kind of a quirky thing that he had noticed, right, or said once. I think he's going to say in a situation... this is what I think he's going to say. I'm not sure, actually. I have read his book, and I should know this. I think he's going to say in a situation where the choice is either have some small quantity of dairy in some product, or sort of demonstrate to a large group of people that veganism is really difficult and restrictive and impractical. I think that's what he's going to say for that last case. The first two are a lot easier, right? What's a case where Paul's approach is going to be best is going to be, someone who is open to the message, basically, but maybe someone who's thought about it before, or a lot of people who haven't thought about it before, and it makes sense to them, and they're able to go through the cognitive dissonance at pace, right? Or it likely is somebody who's already thought about it, perhaps somebody in the preparation stage, right? In that case, somebody really coming and saying, right, bloody well do this, and I'm going to hold you accountable for it, is quite powerful. And the second case where some other message would be better, I'm thinking of like a obese, middle-aged, red-faced dude who it looks like close to a heart attack, right? I don't think he's just going to necessarily go for the factory farming footage, but probably saying to his missus, wanting to cut down on the pork pies, he might hang around for a few years longer. I think in that case is probably... and this is the thing as well, right, with such characters, such larger-than-life characters, they are, as I pointed out in my debate with Paul Wood, going to be, almost by definition, consuming a disproportionately large amount of the food. So, the big, beefy, obese, overweight bloke maybe is not going to find the animal message compelling. And because he's consuming so much meat, maybe as much as 3 other people, right? If he cuts in half, it's actually even more of a reduction than one regular person going completely vegan. So that's what I think he's going to say for the second case. The first case is like someone who's ready or in the preparation stage. And the third case, I think it's going to be something like the alternative is making veganism look very difficult, basically.
Yeah. So like I said, I think Paul's approach works with the people that are ready for it. With the people that it works for, it will work. So you have to have people who are already open, who already feel a sense of guilt. You can talk to them about I think the accountability thing and the fact that you say, like, look, this is maybe the only moment that somebody's going to help hold you accountable. I think that's quite good. I think that can definitely work. I'm just saying in the cases where it doesn't work, and there's a lot of them, other people can use something else. Maybe you can use something else. I don't know.
So give an example of that. Like in that case where it won't work, like create a character or a person and a situation where it won't work, and then where you would prefer to.
I mean, I think my neighbor, who is like a 65-year-old man on a farm country here, the countryside, I would feel more convinced that telling him to try veganuary, for instance, would work better than you go vegan here and now because it's a moral obligation, etc. So that is one example of that.
Because he's like
imagine talking to Paul Wood, right, or one of these other guys. If somebody's like very much bought into it in terms of their profession and it's like wrapped up in their identity and everything else, and they really can't cede any ground on the animal point, then for those people, maybe the thing is, listen, Paul, do it for your ticket, right?
Countryside guy, not in the city, not exposed to these sorts of like, could say like modern messages and things like.
The sense I got
ideals
about it is that he's totally not ready. So if he's not ready, why should I use the approach that Paul says himself is an approach only for people who are ready? Should I then not talk to him because I think he's not ready for that message? Should I just ignore? Should I not try to influence him?
Okay, and then the
I don't
third,
think so.
and then the third one, that the idea, like this is probably again your most controversial thing that we had in my interviews with you, that you think there are some cases where actually using or consuming something technically not vegan would be better in the long run. So could you give us an example of what situation would you be in where it could be better to actually do that?
I mean, these are hypotheticals just to tease out what people find most important, sticking to veganism very strictly, or something else which could be results. And I don't want to say that people who always stick to veganism are not results focused, but I mean, for instance, it could be an undercover investigator. I've heard these stories, undercover investigator being in a slaughterhouse or a factory farming for a couple of weeks. And
here's another component of this. I don't know if it would actually be feasible for Paul to have like a halfway position here, because he can't give away in some ways if his job is to be talking to people all day and trying to compel them to go vegan. You're not going to publicly compromise your negotiation position in front of people. Go, oh, I saw you on YouTube saying it's fine if I just go vegetarian. So I do think that it's important to sometimes recognize that different people can have different roles. Yeah, and I think, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
To like not be suspicious, eat meat along with their factory farming slaughter colleagues.
They kill animals as well.
Yeah, there's 11 people here. Give the stream a like. I appreciate you guys. Like the stream.
Yeah, or they may even have to kill animals. So this is I mean, this is more consequentialist. This is saying like, yeah, in this case the end justifies the means, and it's terrible. I'm sure they're traumatized, but it's an example of where you would cross the line, or where you would.
Yeah, sorry to keep interrupting. I'm just trying to really get to the bottom of it. Could you give us an example, though? What Paul focuses on outreach, right? Not undercover investigation. Yeah. So what about in like an example of talking to somebody, like where you think that outside of an investigation, like just where you're trying to convince somebody to make changes? Yeah. In what situation can you think of a situation there where you think it would be better to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a problem with talking about the environment if I see that a person is interested in the environment. And I would not reason the way Paul does. Paul would say, I think, well, it's not about the environment, it's about the animals. We have to make this very clear. My tactic or my reasoning or belief system would be that, like, okay, they move in that direction for the environment, they move in that direction for health, and then they will be much more open to maybe the next time they see an anonymous person for the moral reasons. So it's priming people for the moral reasons by telling them other things if they're not open straight away for the moral reasons.
Okay, one more thing I'll just add on, because there's something you told me actually privately that I want to put out there as well.
Oh. What's this going to be?
Was like sort of like a better example of the third example that you might have forgotten about now, but we talked about this example of, say you were at a table full of high stakes, very, very wealthy people who are willing to fund, let's say they're willing to fund AV, like, or something similar, like they're willing to put a lot of money in, but they're not vegans yet, but they're very interested in their animal, they're on that road, and say the restaurant is serving truffle sauce pasta, right? But you don't know whether the truffles were obtained through dogs that were specifically bred to find truffles, or pigs, which is quite common, but they can be obtained completely.
Damn, I've never heard of that issue for truffles. Some truffles are non-vegan, huh? Good thing I'm not in the habit of eating a lot of truffles.
Completely vegan, by the way, but you don't know. There's no way to find out. The restaurant doesn't know. Nobody knows. In front of all these people, Tobias would.
Very true, Kerry. Ultimately, yeah. I really don't think that there are many people who are invested enough in the issue of animals to be pro-animal welfare, and who wouldn't say in an ideal world, we wouldn't be farming them at all. I just wish that all abolitionists were welfareists as well, because it goes in the same direction. You're absolutely right, and I do think that whole abolitionist versus welfareist thing, as it was more so sort of a couple of decades ago, was, is exactly the type of division you'd want to fan the flames if you're the factory farm lobbyists, right? You're rubbing your hands if you've got the vegan activists fighting with each other. So it's, I mean, I find this conversation to be constructive. They've both said, it's been a little bit spicy at times, but there's both said it's, we're here to achieve the same end, and they don't, there's a lot of agreement, and there's a lot of mutual respect, I feel.
But entertain the idea that it's maybe better just to eat the truffle pasta to show them all that actually, this is not about being dogmatic, and actually, we can get along here and you can fund a really effective movement. All we care about is what works. We're not about just rules for the sake of rules. Or alternatively, you could say, no, because I don't know, I'm not going to eat it. And then you kind of cause like a bit of like a weird situation at the table with all these influential people that could potentially save millions of animals by funding your movement. So that's kind of like 3 examples of different.
I feel like Paul's thinking, you would want to show those people that you're taking it seriously. I don't know. I think, what would I do in that situation? I don't know. I only just found out that truffles are not vegan, so that's...
different outreach sort of, I suppose you could call them outreach tactics. That does that answer? Does that help guide the conversation a bit more, Paul? Because I know you've been kind of trying to find out where he thinks it's more effective or less effective, and
Yeah, but it's helpful to a degree for you to explain that a bit further, but most of what was said there was based on imagined circumstances.
No, only the last one, I would say.
Well, with your neighbor, you said you didn't feel like he was. You said you didn't have the sense that he was open.
Yeah, I mean,
So that means you haven't actually tried to be direct with him. I think that this is the thing, right? With the outreach protocol we have, it is a fantastic assessment of whether they're open or not. We really...
Do you know what I would love to do is partner up with AV and do some sort of testing of 2 different scripts. I don't know if they do this kind of stuff already, but now that they have, he was mentioning having developed his systems and everything like that, now that they have clear systems to get everybody at an event saying the same thing and sort of give the training, they could be testing out different trainings, right? Do one training in Manchester, another training in London, or whatever it may be, and have people record, tally down how many interactions they've had and how many of them were successful or seem to be successful. Now, I don't think that he would want to do like a vegan versus a reducetarian message, because he doesn't, understandably, right, doesn't want his brand of activism to be associated with reducetarianism. But there could be like different variations of his message or messages that he does approve, which may be more or less effective. Does anyone know if AB does this kind of stuff, or has people... The really important thing to do here would be to have the outreach people literally noting down on a little notepad or something, spoke to this many people and had successful interactions with this many people, and then based on that data, you could quite easily have different trainings associated with different success rates and start to actually do a systematic way and start to generate some evidence that he could take to conversations like this and say, look, we've actually tested this out. We've tried, 100 different scripts that we've given to people, and this one performed the best. I'm actually stoked, honestly, to see Paul being so, in his own way, pragmatic and committed to what is effective. And I really expected his argument to be a principled one rather than a pragmatic one. Like, even if it's not the most effective thing, it's the right thing to do to talk about animals. Right, but he's not said that at all. He's just said, I do think that this is the most effective thing. So credit for that. And I would, if anyone's in contact with AV people who could set this up, I would love to get the chance to work with them and test out some different approaches within their vegan messaging that they could do at different trainings and different events, and have evidence to cite and to improve. Right, that's the other thing I'm impressed about Paul here. He is committed. He's seems to be genuinely asking Tobias at some points. He is committed to doing something if there is something more effective. He's like, what do you think would be more effective? And we'll do it. So yeah, a lot of credit to him, this debate.
Really do. Okay, I'll put it like this: if someone
Again, Tobias, I know Tobias, and I'm very familiar with his views already, so it's kind of less surprising what I'm hearing from Tobias' side. And I largely do agree with a lot of what Tobias is saying as well, right? Like I say, I think it comes down to kind of a market segregation approach, whereby Tobias is going to be able to reach some people and Paul's going to be able to reach some people. And frankly, the diversity of approaches itself, I think, is a good thing.
is even slightly open, which means they would be the kind of person, if they're only slightly open, they would be the kind of person that you would argue should be given a softer message, right? Because you have to be somewhat open to be open in order to be open to like reducing, right? So if they're even somewhat open, I'm going to just remind you that my position is that this approach we have is the most effective at.
Open can mean different things there, right? Like you might just not be open to animal arguments. There will be some people who have just either never had that intuition or brutally knocked it out of themselves by years of ethical compromise. Yeah, for those people, maybe it is about saying, at least cut down on the processed meat so you don't have a heart attack.
Completely cracking them open. So if your neighbor is even remotely open, I think our outreach protocol would crack him open. You know, again, this is a very basic message. And even in the case with regards to the other thing that you mentioned with the potential funders, which I can get into in just a...
How do you measure the results of vegan activism? Well, ideally, you would want to... Basically, it's going to be a question of like how good a data you can get about what people eat subsequently or what people choose to do afterwards. Getting that kind of data is harder than you would think, and you usually are ending up with some form of imperfect data. For example, in the system that I'm imagining, you would have the AV outreach people doing their outreach and having their conversations, and then literally just noting down, did this person say that they were going to go vegan? Did they say that they were going to watch a documentary or whatever? Right, you could have kind of different outcomes. Now, you don't know, you're not going to follow them home, right? You don't know if they are going to go vegan, if they say they're going to go vegan. But a higher proportion of those people who say they're going to go vegan will follow through than the people who don't say they're going to go vegan, presumably. So yeah, if you have one sort of message or one sort of script that's resulting in a far higher proportion of people saying they're going to go vegan, even though it's not a direct measure, you would have reason to believe that that's more effective. And if you could try and do other things, if you had, for example, the ultimate is like retail scanner data, which we got some recently. It's very expensive, about £15,000 for a big spreadsheet. And you can trace sales to a particular area of the country. And in that case, you would want to have like different campaigns associated with different areas of the country so that you can measure like that. How would your idea of testing different scripts be able to measure which ones are better? You would want to have different groups, I think, because they get the training at the start and have their scripts given to them. And then you'd have, the group in City A consistently uses script A all day long. And all of the people note down how many people are converting afterwards. And then, the group in City B uses script B and likewise. And then afterwards you compare out of the two groups who managed to get more people to convert.
At the moment, but Like, we have to trust that the message is clear enough, that the animals are enough of a reason for people to understand this. We have to actually embody that. If we carry the idea in our heads that other people just won't get it, they're going to think this is too strict, that this is too crazy, that this is a cult, that whatever, then we're going to project that into conversations. So, like, we have to be extremely responsible for the way we carry
Yeah, that sucks, scary. There's a lot of that around.
ourselves, and in effect,
There are still a fair few vegan products coming out, though, as far as I can tell. Seems to be like a bit different categories are starting to do better now. Like tofu, I think at the moment is pretty lit. But all the tofu brands have done very well. There's tofu spelled with 2 O's in the UK, which is just coming out with a bunch of new frozen products I was reading. So that's pretty exciting. Some of them are doing better than others.
message, the way we carry the message. So we can be better at the way we communicate. We need to be responsible about that. We can just go into every interaction we have being optimistic and have in our mindset that the person we're talking to will understand this, because it's very easy to understand once it's explained properly, that people don't necessarily want to be oppressors and victimizers, that you're actually giving them a privileged opportunity to upgrade their character in a way that they've never had before. You know, this is the kind of mindset we can have when we go into these interactions, instead of being like,
It's a kind of, pardon me, goodness me. That's a kind of cool framing, the opportunity to be a better person, the kind of aspirational, it's a privilege to be able to do this. I do think that shit about Vegan 2.0 especially, like, is so cool. It's so empowering, don't you think? You can save so many hundreds and thousands of animals. Let's have a look at the Vegan 2 app leaderboard. Top guy here is over 300,000 animals. Yeah, look at this. That's crazy, isn't it? What an achievement. Oh, I'm covering it up. There he is, Felix. 387,000 animals. That's crazy, isn't it? And counting. He's a young man still.
no, they're not going to get it. It's going to be too crazy for them to understand that truffles can sometimes, in fact, most times, be harvested.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Gary. I guess that things in the UK, there was a bunch of these products that came out at all at once, right, when it was very, very fashionable in 2021, 22. And it was always clear to me that that wasn't going to be sustainable, right? There's really not very many categories in a supermarket where there's like 30 different brands of baked beans or whatever, right? And this was the case for plant-based meats for the longest time. So I think it was always going to be the case that there's like a bit of creative destruction that follows, whereby a lot of those brands fall by the wayside, and the good ones stick around and excel.
Using animal exploitation. I
started to read that as well, but alas.
think we can just simply explain it to people. You know, it's not hard to explain. The more comfortable I've become about this, the more passionate I've become about this being the most effective approach. And it's not just working for me, it's working for people of all walks, of all sizes, of all shapes, of all, creeds, all over the world. So I know that this isn't just a one size fits all for every person, because you actually have to be capable, you have to be willing to say the difficult things.
So do you have a problem
confronting people is...
Do you have a problem doing something else with these other people, the ones who are not open? Don't you agree that they might not be open for your message and approach, but they might be open for other things, and wouldn't that be a good thing?
I think it's skewing the circumstance in an unnecessarily negative way by saying that. I think that those people who would be open to reducitarian message would be somewhat open, and if they're somewhat open, I'll get them to understand that they should be vegan. And if they still choose to reduce as a result of the conversation, then they'll do that anyway. So I might as well give them a clear vegan message.
Yeah. It's not the approach I would take in that sense. I mean, I think there is.
A good question as well. No, I don't. I don't verify any entrances on there. It's all kind of on the honor system. So yeah, it's not really feasible to verify all those, but hopefully people are being honest. I don't think I have any outrageously high people who I don't judge to be in fact doing a lot. Oh, hell yeah, look, there's a new person in here in third. I don't recognize this name until today. Damn, Joe, you're in fourth now. You gotta drop some big donos, get back up the leaderboard. There's some serious animals saved on here, though. This is vegan2.org, by the way. I'll put the link to this in chat. You guys can sign up if you're not already.
They're very clearly people who are open to different things and interested in different things that you will get with different things. And I see all these things as doors through which we could lead them to animal rights.
But again, Tobias, like I said, we've tried this. We used to have an environmental message and a health message in AV for 3 years. We did this, and we were all.
Don't tell anyone, Eric, but it's vibe coded in a platform called Replit. But I'm letting everyone believe that I'm some sort of computer programmer, so.
Already the largest vegan street activism organization in the world within 1 year of operating AV.
Yeah.
So for 3 years, we operated in around 1,000 cities around the world. We're easily the most global vegan outreach organization. So to say this, and you're saying it repeatedly, completely overlooks the work we're doing. We have already done this. We've already tried to hook people in with as many different hook points as possible. And this is the result. The result has led us to here,
Okay.
to where we are currently. We learned that that was actually not the most effective way to get people to go vegan. And in fact,
I would love to work with activist groups like this to do proper studies of this stuff, because I am inclined to believe him. I think that his firstly, it's in line with kind of data that I've seen on the experimental stuff. But I think I would not be surprised if his experience, having spoken to over 30,000 people, converges quite closely with data we subsequently collect when we're trying to work out which message is the best. I should try and reach out to AV to set this up.
we're generating more of these people who self-identify and don't understand veganism and feel like they're already doing enough. They tried it and didn't work for their health. You know, all these things are creating problems for us now. And so I think that what you're saying actually generates more problems than it does solutions. So you're saying that it's something that we should do, you know, in like along with what we're doing.
I'm mainly saying that
but actually I
other
think
people can do it, and that like it would be a mistake to say that other people should not try to get to these people with other messages. And I'm fine with you
well,
saying,
I mean, of course I'm going to say that because I know I'm finding this to be the most effective. So I'm going to tell people you should be doing what we're doing at AV
yeah. So,
because I think that's the best thing for the movement.
so
But I can't stop other organizations from doing what they're doing, and I'm not trying to protest. I'm not going to ever work against another organization.
okay, that's very good to hear, and it would be nice if like, yeah, that's a message worth spreading, I think.
Yeah, it is. Us suit-wearing lobbyist types like myself and Tobias, I think we can, like I've said in this conversation, right, I had the mistaken impression that Paul was going to be committed to doing the animal message because that's the right thing, regardless if it's most effective, and he's made clear that that's not the case. I think that, you know, people like me and Tobias, if I can put it that way, have this idea that there's this uncompromising view and that these type of activists might be attacking other activists who are doing different methods and stuff like this. So it's really, really great to have it reiterated that that's not the case. And yeah, like Tobias said, that's good message to spread.
I'm very open to the fact
It becomes such a problem. Like, we're doing this mass lobby day for the cage free thing, right? Action Network. Where is it? My new computer. I've lost all my links. I'll find the link for it. But and in that case, there's a lot of organizations that, you know, a lot of the people working there are on board, but because they're like a purely vegan organization, they don't have the mandate to get involved with like what is undoubtedly going to be a very impactful bit of lobbying for animals.
I mean, it's basically, I don't know what data or evidence you have, and I'm a bit skeptical, I have to say, about like people saying like, yeah, we'll go vegan now, that they actually do. And I know you will say like, yeah, we can't track that, and I mean, that is a problem, I think.
Here it is. Mass Lobby Day in Westminster on October 21st. Look at that, they're 3 letters away from their goal of 150 letters sent. Can we get them up, guys? Have we got it in us? Is there people from the UK here who are going to come and sign up to this October 21st day? I'll be there. And a bunch of different animal activist orgs will be there as well. Abolitionists welcome.
But I'm open.
No group can ever track
Yeah,
that.
I'm open to. I mean, you could, for instance, like suppose you have a focus on one town with a lot of AV protests, and then you could maybe somehow track the meat consumption in that area in the supermarkets or whatever. But anyway, I'm open to you saying that that it is the most effective way. I'm saying, still keep saying there should be other things around that. I'm very interested to like actually try it once and participate in the cube and just follow the protocol and see
This is a good idea. I would love for you to join the next campaigns we do in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, we're going to do a large campaign. It will easily be the greatest campaign we'll do. Everyone is greater than the one before, but now we're at such a high level with what we're doing. So I invite you to join. It will probably be in Amsterdam. I'll give you, I mean, you'll see the details. They'll be posted pretty soon. In the next few months, you'll see us promoting the next big campaign we do next year. And it'll be a boot camp for everybody involved, and you'll get a proper experience of what our outreach approach is like, and you'll get to test it. There was, and you know, again, this is anecdotal, but
There's a Brian research pen. Looking good, Tobias.
there was an outreach interaction I had recently, and it was one of my favorites because this was a classic case of, okay, first of all, this guy was an MMA athlete. He had a cauliflower ear. So this guy was a grappler, and he was massive. He was like 3 times my size. He could have snapped me like a breadstick if he wanted to. And I'm talking to him, and his girlfriend was vegan, but had not convinced
True Oppenheimer.
him on even reducing. He
Well, I did have to buy 200 of these pens.
said that he was reducing, but he was actually still stuck in this complacency mindset. He was also trying to say that he would pay more money for to stay away from factory farms. So he would, you know, seek out free range, small farm, organic products. And he was giving me a lot of excuses, actually, a lot of pushback. And I did not waver at all from the protocol that we have. And it's a 3-part video. It's actually pinned to my reels. You know how on Instagram, on the reel page of your Instagram account, there's 3 pins at the top. You can choose 3 reels. It's a 3-part video series, and they're currently pinned to the top of my Instagram if you want to check them out. Basically, he runs through his excuses. I don't let him off the hook. I continue to hold him accountable. I continue to call him out for lying, for being a hypocrite. And he says himself, when I feel this kind of pressure, when someone tells me I need to do something, it pushes me away. This is what he said. And most vegans in that circumstance would back off. And they would feel like, oh shit, I'm being ineffective. Maybe I should back off. And like you say, we should listen to what non-vegans have to say. Of course we should listen, but what I was trying to say before was that when
We should listen critically. I mean, yeah, I do agree with that, right? Like this is very transparent. This guy in this situation is just lying. He's basically saying, I want you to stop saying what you're saying. And he is doing some inference and saying, oh, if I say that it's pushing me away, he's going to stop it. I mean, it's very transparent, I feel. But yeah, I definitely agree with Paul on this point.
when they say I am against
We should listen to what they have to say, but we should listen critically.
factory farming, we shouldn't necessarily believe them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are going, like, it's their actions that matters. So yes, we should take into account what they say, but at the end of the day, you have to know that we're swimming through ego, and we're dealing with a lot of bullshit that humans carry through their conditioning. So in order to cut through those layers of conditioning, and there is no greater conditioning than human supremacism, and I do agree with Gary Yourofsky when he said it's the root of all discrimination. But anyway, back to this conversation.
Check this out. This is another famous Brian Research pen enjoyer. Look at that. Anyone recognize this fella? I put steal his look. Washed black overshirt, Gucci, £1,850. 18 carat yellow gold chain, Cartier, £4,900. Soft touch ballpoint pen, Brian Research. Free this week at the Fair Conference. That's cool, right? How about this guy? Look out. The man himself. These pens are all over the place, I'm telling you.
This conversation with this MMA athlete, he felt pressure, and he said, I feel like this is pushing me away, actually. Right? So instead of backing off, I went even harder. I doubled down. And the result was, actually, I won't tell you what the result was, but it was obviously one of my favorite interactions for a good reason. You should see how it turned out. But then as a follow-up, I got a message from him because we stayed in contact. I actually wanted to go and train with him. But through conversations, he told me that he hated that conversation. But since that day, he's been vegan. So there it is. I just gave you the result of that conversation. But so this is why I say we shouldn't necessarily listen to what non-vegans are telling us, right? The truth is the truth.
I expect that the Paul types view people like myself and Tobias as maybe like being too polite, or too like not having the balls basically to say the proper thing, and to because the interactions they have are quite confrontational, right? And it's obvious that some people are not going to be comfortable doing that. And I think once you become aware of something like that, okay, it's obvious that people are not going to want to do this, and therefore it's much like with veganism, right? When you kind of see all the excuses coming, you must be thinking the same thing about confrontational activism if you have had the experience of having it work, even with people for whom it seems very unlikely to work. If you have that experience and you are able to get the cauliflower MMA fighter to actually go vegan after a very contentious interaction, yeah, you must be looking at people like me and Tobias and going like, come on, mate, get with it, right? Now, I still think that there are going to be cases where different messages work in different situations and different, particularly in institutions, right? But yeah, I can definitely see how each of these perspectives comes to have like kind of a bit of a caricatured view of the other, if I could put it that way. But yeah, this is a nice thing to realize, I guess.
He recognized the truth for what it was. I knew that he had to be held accountable, because the basic way to navigate any injustice is that victimizers should be held accountable, right? I also only held him accountable to the values that he shared with me.
See, that's the kind of phrase where I would think like, okay, but there's a bunch of empirical stuff about what's effective. Like, the basic way to navigate any injustice is to hold the victimizers accountable. I mean, it kind of sounds good, but that doesn't seem to be rooted in an evaluation of effectiveness. I recognise he's saying elsewhere in this conversation they have found this to be the most effective, but that's the kind of approach that I was sort of expecting, where it's like, this is the right thing to do, kind of regardless of how effective it is. Again, that's not been Paul's main take in this.
He told me he respected animals. So this isn't even about me and my values anymore. I am just making sure that he tells the truth. That he doesn't just say those things, that he actually acts that way. And he ended up being a person with the kind of character that was willing to change, but only after an intense amount of pressure was applied to him.
Yeah.
Because no one had actually done that. Everybody else was like, okay, I guess he's not listening to the go vegan message, so maybe we should back off. And everybody else, his girlfriend, maybe others, were trying to do the softer approach, and it wasn't working.
So, yeah, it's a nice story, and I mean, you can build a whole theory on it, I think, but this may happen a lot in your experience, so I'm not going to contradict it. But here's one thing that I'm a bit cautious about, is that, like, so this, what you're doing with this approach, where you have pre-selected maybe a person that is open, and you are talking to them, and you're charismatic, and you're well-spoken, and you can convince him.
Don't forget handsome.
I'm still, given the risks that there are, and there are. I mean, I'm not saying, yes, you're right. We don't have to take people every time at their word, but I'm not going to ignore the studies about reactants, etc. either. It would be not prudent to do that. So given those risks, I am a bit afraid that many activists, young people, whatever, see this and take this everywhere without the context of AV, without the protocol, take it online and start talking to people like that. A lot of other people looking at it and also finding this too aggressive, are not comfortable with being called a hypocrite online or whatever, and just are reactive and are further away from our cause and where we want to lead them than before. I think that's a real risk, that your protocol, your approach gets taken out of context, and a lot of people, I see so much crap that people throw at each other, and also in the movement, like people towards each other for not being entirely vegan, all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's something that I would be like really mindful of that issue.
Well, people are doing this approach online. In fact, I would say that I see that happening more than ever before. People are actually just debating people on TikTok, where people just join on a live stream and they just run the outreach protocol on them, and they're finding great success with it. I think that, if the outreach approach is actually followed properly, that it has great success regardless of whether the screens are involved or not.
If your protocol could help people deal better with conversations and discussions online, then that would be a very good thing.
Yeah, it does. It actually does. And I see this, I've been seeing this more than ever before with people who are doing live debates, who are doing, even in the comment section, going back and forth with people, running the protocol. And
I think all of that stuff counts. I never feel that you're wasting your time when you're posting online about vegan things in comment sections. If you ever have hesitancy around doing it, I urge you in the direction of doing it, because in all forms, right? It's easy to belittle online stuff, it's slacktivism, whatever, but that is very visible and probably, in fact, definitely visible to more people than the things you say IRL, as the kids say, right? Where it's, gone like a fart in the wind. And online stuff is not, and is seen by many more people. And yeah, I never underrate the importance of that stuff.
And it works a charm. It really does. I've had some of the most stubborn, hard
So we watch the videos of these guys doing their activism that get thousands of views. If they weren't recording that, they would have only reached that one person, right?
headed people showing up to Cube saying, no, this can't be the most effective, criticizing literally everything we do, always asking questions, but coming from a good faith place. And in the end, they all end up with the same result of being like, wow, this really is the most effective approach. So,
I mean, huge if true. Like, I would love to do a study of this, and it would be so based if we found that actually, the AV method just is way better than whatever other script that you want to run. I guess you would have people try and come up with like the most effective script that they could, or different resources that they could teach and stuff like that. But if what Paul's saying is true, we should put some data on that so that people like Tobias and me can stop questioning it. Right? And I've put myself in that category very much so. And if it's not, the great thing is that I've detected from this conversation, Paul, it seems to me, would say, hey, this is great, we found something that works better, let's do this instead. So yeah, I think, man, I'm going to definitely reach out to them about doing this.
So that's why I'm really confident about the fact that once you join us, I think it will change your view.
I'm open to that. I want to try it. If I see it successful, I'll be unbiased. I will champion it even more so. At the same time, I want to be wary of not taking only these street experience data points, no matter how many there are, and ignoring research. I wouldn't do that either. And other point is we need other approaches around that. And again, my reducitarian approach is mostly for institutional change. Maybe one quick example of another tactic. I was just at the Plant-Based University summer camp where teams at universities are trying to convince the university to go plant-based. So their interaction with students at booths, at outreach booths, tables, is not, they don't say to people, we want to make you vegan. So it's completely different than what you're doing. They're asking for support for institutional change. They're asking for signatures so that the university changes their cafeteria. And by doing that, if they succeed at doing that, they would make it more easy. If the food is good and tasty, they would make it, I hope, more easy for you to go in there and do your outreach at that university.
One interesting thing about the Plant-Based Universities campaign, they actually do have quite a strict approach of doing only a 100% plant-based ask. So they don't, and we've said to them before, you could ask them to do plant-based defaults and stuff like that, and they've said back, we're not really interested in doing half measures. Now I said to them, maybe you could have this in your back pocket as a fallback option. If the university says, no, we're not going to do 100% plant-based, it's a lot better than nothing. But again, I keep coming back to the point about like a negotiating position where you don't want to make that known that you do have this kind of fallback lower ask when you are starting out with the higher ask. You can't go up to someone and say, I'm here to convince you to go vegan, and if not, to go vegetarian. Because you know what the outcome's going to be in that case, right?
So that's a combination of, I think, that personal outreach and the institutional change around it.
I think to round this out, what I'll say is I think it's great that you're agreeing to go down to the cubes and actually do some on-the-ground research. And I think that's like a good sign of like good faith and something that we need to see a lot more across.
Yeah, I need to do that as well. I mean, I am very much in, not quite in the ivory tower, 'cause I'm not quite inside academia, but, you know, removed from the street level activism, and I think I'd benefit from going and doing a bit of it.
Across our movement is that when people disagree, that one side is willing to be like, do you know what, whatever it is, whether you've, I don't know, whether you're doing something and I've not checked it out, but it doesn't look very good. Okay, well, I'll just come and see. And if I still don't think it's good, then at least you've given it a good go, you know? And I'd ask, maybe on the flip side of that, Paul, do you think you'd be willing to read Tobias's book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I would be. Because your book is called How to Create a Vegan World. So, of course, I'm wondering, you know, how that's going for you. And also if there's anything I can learn from you, because that's obviously my goal too.
Yeah. And so I think maybe we could revisit after you've both kind of gone through that process of fully understanding where each other is, like whether going to the cube or reading the book. And actually, you know, maybe when you meet at the cubes and stuff, you can talk about it more. Then we could revisit this in a year and see where you're both at. Then maybe that could be pretty cool.
No, I just want to say I think this was a productive discussion. I think it was all in good faith. I like differing in opinions in this way. I hope we can model it to some extent for other people, because again, there's so much less productive disagreement in the movement, and I think it's really important to differ in views, but to still trust each other.
Yeah, I'm willing to read your book. It would be cool if we actually sat down and recorded a conversation after your experience at the Cube. Like, I can tell you that I can commit to reading your book by that point, because that would be next year when we do the campaign here in Amsterdam or in Europe. I'm pretty sure it'll be Amsterdam, but that'll be confirmed soon. So I think that would be a good place to like carry this forward from here. All right, Tobias, nice
Good
to meet you.
Good luck with everything.
And thanks for doing
I'm
the
on your
David.
side. And thanks.
Thank
David.
you. And thank you both for coming on. And guys, make sure to get involved in the comments and let us know what you think.
Nice. Well, yeah, I agree. That was a productive conversation. It's really cool to see that disagreement modeled in a productive way. I think it was an entertaining conversation. There's a good amount of back and forth, and a good amount of disagreement. But I think that ultimately, yeah, very good-natured and converging on the same aims. Alex O'Connor video is doing well. 47 views after nearly 2 hours, which is doing better than my recent content. We'll keep an eye on it. Didn't get onto the vegan Reddit, but it's got onto the vegan activism Reddit. I was waiting moderator approval on the vegan Reddit. Does that mean I've been modded? Alright, what are we going to take a look at next? I said that we'd have a look at this video. For somebody who was here asking the best way to get someone to go vegan. This is my video on the topic. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'll post a link to this in the chat. But I want to show a little bit of the data that was underlying this. Here we go. This is a survey that we did in the UK. And we're looking at these two models, but I'm going to talk about the stages of change model here. So you guys probably heard me say someone in the contemplation stage or in the pre-contemplation stage. These are consecutive stages in this model of behavior change. You then have the preparation stage. This is an individual first thinks about it. Individual's convinced, they go to the preparation stage. Individual gives up meat, they're at the action stage. And an individual changes their identity, they're at the maintenance stage. And we found some pretty decent evidence to support this. So these were the two hypotheses here. we were looking whether people do in fact tend to progress through these stages, and whether there's higher self-efficacy and decisional balance at the later stages. So that's the other part of this. As you move through the stages, you increase in your ability to maintain the change, or your belief in your ability to maintain the change. Like, you realize, I can be vegan to a greater extent, and then you also increase in your strength of conviction, like, this is the right thing for me to do. So we had 1,500 people answering surveys over a year. So they did one at the start, and then one after 6 months, another one after 12 months. And this is the sort of how it shook out with respect to these stages. The red here is pre-contemplation, so people who have never thought about giving up meat. And as you can see, there's nearly 50% of the total. The orange is the contemplation stage, so this is the sort of cognitive dissonance stage, and that takes us up to about 80% of people who are in these first two stages. Yellow then is preparation. They have made the decision they're going to give up meat, and they have taken some steps in that direction. Then action stage is normally defined as the first 6 months after having changed. Then we've got the maintenance stage, which is beyond that, and sometimes termination stage, right? Which is like it's no longer even a question. And the thing that we did here was seeing how many people gave up meat versus didn't give up meat between the stages, who were at these various different stages. So as you can see here, we had a higher proportion of people giving up meat for when they were in these later stages compared to the people in the earlier stages, right? So that suggests there is like a gradual progression through the stages. Didn't really find that between wave 2 and 3. It's also kind of a wash for overall. It was a bit more convincing on the relapsing part of this, where you have a lower percentage of people at these later stages who go back to eating meat in a subsequent wave. And you have a higher percentage of these people in the earlier stages, right? People in the action stage here. 25% of them had returned to eating meat by the time we asked the question next. So again, it's like evidence of people moving through these stages. Then these are the average scores for people's self-efficacy in red, which is their belief that they can maintain a meat-free diet. And the decisional balance in blue, which is the strength of their conviction that they ought to be vegan, basically. And as you can see, we've got this kind of upwards trend through the stages, such that people in the earlier stages have the lowest level of decisional conviction. Self-efficacy is interesting. Actually goes down from the pre-contemplation to the contemplation stage. When people are thinking about it to a greater extent, they're kind of more detailed in thinking about the practicalities, and they're thinking, you know, maybe it would be tougher to give up meat. They're kind of more in touch with the cost of doing so, right? And then rises for subsequent stages, where when they do start to do it, right, they're in the preparation stage, they're doing some preparation and taking some steps, or after they've made the change, right, it jumps a lot in these later stages. People think, okay, this is easier than I thought. So that's the stages of change model. In a bit more detail, you've got these 5 stages that it goes through, and this video, I will play it now because it's yeah, maybe some of you guys have seen this before, but I haven't watched it in a little while, and I like this one. So this is like a very pragmatic guide to getting someone to go vegan throughout the 5 stages, and I believe this has a ton of links. Not as many as I was expecting, to be honest. But there are a ton of resources mentioned here, one of which is the Food Tea app that we looked at yesterday. But let's take a look. This is 16 minutes. I probably won't pause it too much because it's just going to be me talking over me. In this video, I'm going to give you a framework and some useful tools for getting somebody in your life to go vegan. This isn't about tricking anybody or forcing anybody, and I'm not here to tell you that I have a foolproof system for getting people to go vegan 100% of the time. Good question, Rebecca. best arguments against veganism that I've heard. My inclination is to say, like, kind of, by the way, how much better do I look now than I did here? I mean, let's be real. I think it's that light coloured background was really washing me out, but I'm in a bit better shape now as well. Yeah, that's a glow up. Best arguments I've heard against veganism. So my instinct is to, like, think along Vegan 2.0 lines and just say that, I mean, basically it is the case that as you get closer and closer to being the perfect vegan, there's kind of diminishing returns for each additional thing that you give up or whatever it may be. But there's not really against veganism, to be fair. It's just, yeah, it's not really against veganism. Yeah, I don't know, honestly, Rebecca. I don't really think that there are any arguments against veganism that I would call good. There can be, like, less degrees of bad. But yeah, I'm hesitant to endorse any of them to any significant extent. Oh, right, Oppenheimer. Yeah, that's a good one. Brian Tomasic is dairy because it might be net good and preventing more wild animal suffering than direct suffering it causes. You disagree with him on that and most things, yeah. Yeah, that could be the case. I mean, it definitely could be the case that some hypothetical animal product could cause less suffering. And again, that's only really going to be relevant if you're thinking about it in terms of suffering than some hypothetical non-animal product. But yeah, who knows? In this video, I'm going to give you a framework and some useful tools for getting somebody in your life to go vegan. This isn't about tricking anybody or forcing anybody, and I'm not here to tell you that I have a foolproof system for getting people to go vegan 100% of the time. I don't. What I do have is a well-established framework for behaviour change and several evidence-based tools that I've acquired over a decade as a researcher of meat reduction. This video is mostly based on my 2022 paper titled Going Veggie: Identifying and Overcoming the Psychological and Social Barriers to Veganism. We use a framework called the Stages of Change model, which has been used with great success to treat alcoholism, smoking addiction, and other habitual individual behaviours. The model views this kind of behaviour change as a years-long process during which an individual grows in their conviction and their capability to practice some new positive behaviour. Let's take a look at the model overall, and then we'll look in more detail at each stage. The model has 5 stages. First stage is called pre-contemplation. In this stage, the individual has not yet thought about changing the behaviour. For meat consumption, our survey data shows that this is the most common stage that individuals are at. The second stage is contemplation. In this stage, the individual actually thinks about changing the behaviour seriously, and they'll often experience a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of motivated reasoning, and generally a lot of resistance to change, where people want to just go back to not thinking about it. This is the trickiest stage to navigate, and we're going to talk about how to handle that. The third stage is preparation. At this stage, the person has actually made the decision to change the behaviour, and they intend to make the change sometime in the next 6 months. They might have taken some steps, like trying different meat alternatives or planning out meat-free meals. The fourth stage is action. At this stage, the individual has actually taken action, they've made the change, and they have now given up the behaviour, in this case, eating meat. The fifth and final stage is maintenance. Individuals at this stage are basically long-term adherents of the new behaviour. They've given up the old behaviour more than 6 months ago, and they now find it increasingly easy and habitual to maintain the new behaviour. The idea that it's a bit of a pain to be vegan is only really true at the start. After about 6 months, you've navigated what you're going to buy in the supermarket, it becomes pretty easy. So these are the 5 stages of change. Our survey data from the UK shows that 49% of people are in the pre-contemplation stage, 30% are in the contemplation stage, 6% in the preparation stage, 3% in action, and 12% in the maintenance stage. In other words, roughly half have not seriously considered eating less meat, Around about 30% are considering it currently, and around about 20% have already given up meat or they've decided that they're going to give up meat soon. This is a useful framework to have because when you're interacting with one individual, it's good to think about what stage they're at and what progress might actually look like for them. If somebody's way back here at the pre-contemplation stage, then for them, a conversation... Yeah, true, Rebecca, the thing about bivalves not being sentient, yeah, that's quite compelling. I think it does hinge on sentience, basically. Better, I think... I'm inclined to disagree. I think that if we can impact what happens in the wild, we should, but that's a big if, right? And there's all sorts of unpredictability around that. The interventions at the moment seem to be basically research-based. I don't know about scallops because they are motile. Mobile? Oh yeah, okay. The fact they can move doesn't make me 100% not sentient. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to know ultimately, isn't it? Like you can't, I don't think you can measure sentience because it's going to be subjective. You're having to infer on brain and nervous system and stuff like that. Might be progress, even if they appear to disagree with you. At least now they're thinking about it and they weren't before. That's still progress, even if they didn't go vegan overnight. Also, once you understand which stage a person is at, you can start to locate the right tools to move them along to the next stage. The pre-contemplation stage is the most common stage that people are at with respect to veganism. Our UK survey data shows that around 49% have never seriously considered giving up meat. The good news is that some proportion of that 49% only need to be prompted to consider it, and they'll get to veganism pretty quickly. For most people, however, that's not going to be the case. It'll be a bit more of a journey. But whether they're low-hanging fruit or the most stubborn meathead, everyone needs to be prompted to think about it first. Some people will experience cognitive dissonance, they'll push back, that's true, and we'll look at how to deal with that, but they won't even get that far if they don't think about it first. In general, the animal movement needs a lot of wide-reaching media to prompt this 49% to think about the reasons why they might think about giving up meat. We need billboards, TV, radio ads, online outreach, all of this stuff. The goal should be to get them thinking about it and to prompt further investigation. This is the goal on an individual level too. You want them to think about it and think about the reasons why they might give up meat. Recommending documentaries is a great way of doing this. Other media like books and podcasts can also be useful, but documentaries really are the best. Common ones that are recommended include Dominion and Earthlings. If you're in the UK, I recommend Earthling Ed's documentary, Land of Hope and Glory. You can find a link to that in the description. If it's books that they're into, Jonathan Safran Foer's Eating Animals is said to be a very compelling one for people who have yet to seriously think about eating less meat. In terms of conversation, the best approach at this stage could be kind of did you know? Joey Carbstrong is fond of using this stat that over 90% of pigs in the UK are killed in gas chambers, and I think that's a good one to get people thinking. The goal is to get them thinking about it further. Most people are not going to go vegan right away. At this stage, progress looks like getting them to agree to watch a documentary or read a book, and then following up on that agreement to make sure that they do it, and spend more time thinking about the issue. That's what happens in the contemplation stage. The contemplation stage really is the big one. It's when somebody seriously sits down and thinks about whether they're going to give up meat. This almost never happens in a live conversation. Most people are not walking around with a detailed idea and moral argument for why they think it's justified to eat meat. In reality, eating meat is the default. Most people grew up eating meat, and most of those people just haven't given it much thought. So when they are prompted to think about it, it would be perfectly reasonable to say, well, that's an interesting question. I've never really given it much thought. But that's not what happens. Instead, people usually imagine that they must have a good reason for eating meat, especially when you're presenting so many compelling reasons not to eat meat, in terms of animal abuse on factory farms, the overwhelming scientific evidence that we need to eat less meat for the purpose of the planet, the overwhelming scientific evidence that red meat gives us heart disease and that processed meat gives us cancer. They think, surely there must be a good reason why we're doing this, right? This is motivated reasoning. You start with the conclusion that you know you have to reach, in this case that it's okay to eat meat, and then you work backwards to make up premises that are going to allow you to get there. Research has shown that over 90% of meat eaters justify eating meat with reference to one or more of the 4 N's. that eating meat is natural, normal, necessary, and nice. Of these 4 common justifications, necessary is just inaccurate, it's clearly not necessary for humans to eat meat, and while normal, natural, and nice might be accurate in some sense, they're just not good reasons to do factory farming. If you're a good cook or you have access to good vegan food, you can address the nice objection by showing them that they can have perfectly nice vegan food and that they don't have to sacrifice anything by giving up meat. If you can successfully show that there's no sacrifice, then they're going to lose the motivation behind the motivated reasoning. If you want to go down the route of arguing with someone, I recommend that it's a good idea to frame the conversation as not being about them personally. I'll sometimes say to somebody, let's not talk about your meat consumption here, let's talk about somebody else consuming factory farmed meat. And sometimes that allows them the distance to be a little bit more objective. The most effective tool I've come across for having the debate itself is called Name the Trait. This has been made famous here on YouTube by this guy called Ask Yourself. You can go and find his content in the description or by searching on YouTube. Name the Trait is basically a conversational tool that gets people to think more deeply about the reasons why they really think it's okay to eat animals. And sometimes they'll realise that they actually don't have a good reason to think that. Even in the case where you do debate someone, and even in the case where they do go on to change their mind, it usually won't happen in the moment. The contemplation stage doesn't happen during live conversations. It happens afterwards when you're thinking about it in the shower or in bed at night. The danger for somebody at the contemplation stage is that they'll just stop thinking about it. So for somebody at this stage who's meant to be engaging with the idea, who's promised that they're going to watch your documentary, a useful thing to do can be to tag them in relevant content in social media just to remind them of the idea. At the end of the day, you can't force somebody to change their mind. All you can do is keep reminding them and eventually hope that they come to see your way of things. Once a person does decide that they want to give up meat, they move to the preparation stage. At this stage, the person is still eating meat, but they might have taken some steps towards reducing meat or experimenting with meat substitutes, and they intend to give up meat within the next few months. So at this stage, the decision is made, they are preparing to give up meat, and they no longer need to be convinced. At this stage, we need to go from telling that person why they should give up meat to telling them how to give up meat. So here we're getting into things like sharing vegan recipes, swap guides, maybe going food shopping together, planning meals together and cooking together. These are all really great examples of things that you can do to help someone during the preparation stage. It's really important to be inviting and encouraging during the preparation stage. You want to make this seem like an achievable goal and an inviting community to be a part of. That means being very supportive of the person's decision to give up meat and not berating them for slip-ups and imperfections early on. Temporary challenges like Veganuary or 30-Day Vegan are a great tool for somebody at the preparation stage. They already have a good level of commitment to give it a go for this long, and a good number of those people will end up just sticking with it at the end of the 30 days and transition right into the action stage. In the action stage, the person has taken a definitive action and they've given up meat. This is generally the biggest step in terms of the psychological and social change. And new vegans in this stage might feel kind of like they're pretending, it might feel a bit weird to call themselves vegan at first. Now, people in this stage who are newly vegetarian or vegan are likely getting a lot of pushback from different people in their lives. Maybe their friends or family are making fun of their new decision. And that makes it really important for vegans to be supportive and encouraging about their decision to give up meat. I'll often tell new vegetarians or vegans, congratulations, or good for you. It's also a good idea to invite new vegetarians or vegans into vegetarian or vegan social groups, either in real life or online. Having that social support in your life or on your social media feed can be the difference between a new vegan sticking with it or sacking it off after a couple of months. Aside from support and affirmation of their new identity via social groups, there are 2 really important tools that you can use at this stage. The first tool is emergency planning. You basically want to plan for 2 types of situations where relapsing and eating meat is most likely to occur. That's high stress situations and high fun situations. You know that you have a tough day at work this week and you're going to be tempted by your favorite takeaway order. Make sure to research ahead of time the most gluttonous vegan takeaway you can find. Going to a barbecue this weekend with a bunch of meat-eating friends? Make sure that you have the best vegan burgers you can get so that you don't feel jealous when you have crappy food in comparison. This type of emergency planning can be game-changing. Literally, take down a piece of paper, write down a few high stress and high fun situations that you're likely to encounter, and make a plan for how you'll deal with them. The next tool for new vegetarians and vegans is called the Food Tea app. This app can program your brain to respond to healthy foods like fruits and vegetables and not respond to unhealthy foods like meat and dairy. It does this via a simple game where you have to tap healthy foods that show up in green circles and not tap unhealthy foods that show up in red circles. Studies have shown that playing this game for just a few minutes a day can significantly reduce meat cravings in just a couple of weeks. And the app is free, by the way. After about 6 months in the action phase, the strangeness of one's new identity and the cravings for meat or dairy products start to wear off, and the person moves on to the maintenance stage. The maintenance stage usually refers to someone who's changed their behaviour at least 6 months ago, and at this stage people become much less likely to relapse and start the behaviour again. In veganism, after 6 months somebody has shown themselves that they are able to stick to a vegan diet and be healthy, so their self-belief starts to grow and their conviction starts to grow that they're doing the right thing. For people in the maintenance stage, social groups remain really important, including online and IRL. It's difficult to overstate the importance of vegans being networked with other vegans. We need to exist outside the vegan bubble as well, but if you are the only vegan you know, that's a tough life. Being in social groups together also makes vegans more likely to become active. The difference between a vegan and an activist is much greater than the difference between a vegan and a meat eater. Even people who have been vegan for many years shouldn't rest on their laurels. There's so much more that you can do to help animals, and you're more likely to do that if you're in groups with other people who care about the same things. If you want to know more about what those things are, you can watch my video Upgrade to Vegan 2.0, and if you want to join a supportive community, head on over to dsc.gg/ChrisBryantPhD. So, let's summarise what we've talked about here. Getting someone to go vegan is best viewed as a series of 5 stages, and there are tools that you can use at each stage. At the pre-contemplation stage, it's about bringing the issue to their attention, getting them to talk about it, and recommending documentaries, books, and other resources to get them to think about it further. At the contemplation stage, those documentaries, books, and conversations continue to be a useful resource. You can also tag them in relevant content on social media to keep it in their minds, and show them good vegan food to show them that it doesn't need to be a sacrifice. At the preparation stage, you switch from telling them why to showing them how. Being supportive, doing activities like cooking and shopping together, and inviting them to take part in temporary vegan challenges are all useful tools at this stage. At the action stage, that social support is paramount because new vegetarians and vegans will be experiencing some social resistance. Emergency planning can help them to deal with challenging situations, and the Food Tea app can help reduce animal product cravings. And in the maintenance stage, social groups are a paramount tool to keep long-term vegetarians and vegans networked and engaged and doing more for animals. Each person is on their own journey here, somewhere along this process. Your job is to work out what stage they're at and then do what you can to help them reflect on, plan for, or embrace eating less meat. I hope this video was a useful tool to help you do that. Please give it a like, subscribe, and share this video with a vegan who's on a mission to make a difference. This is Chris Bryant, PhD. Cheers. Well, guys, I think I'm going to leave it there for today. We dropped the AOC video earlier on. Let's have a look how that's doing before I wrap up. Up to 60 views, not too bad, not too bad. Doing much better than my other recent videos, so that's good. I've just been clipping the stream, so it's a little bit lazy content lately. But glad the new one's doing well. Have a quick look on Fast Action Network as well, hey? See if they've got anything more for us. No, it doesn't look like it. Well, if you have not, like me, completed Fast Action Network, go over and give them a hard time in the new campaign on Radisson and Choice Hotels. Nice tone. That's good. I am honestly a terrible cook personally. I was on the TV show Come Dine With Me, and I didn't do well. I didn't do well. It was all vegans, so you know I wasn't like the vegan showing up veganism, but you know I did much worse than the other vegans. I'd love to be able to watch that on stream, but it's gonna be copyright. You can find it though. Yeah, I was on Come Dine With Me. Yeah, I was. See if I can find the link to it. I was on this about 3 years ago. It was during COVID. Yeah, here it is. There I am on the right. These are the other people who are on the show. This is you can watch this in I'll put the link in the chat here. I can't watch it on stream because it's going to be copyright. But yeah, this was good fun. This was good fun. There's 5 episodes of it. I cook on the last day. And this is we're sat at this massive table because it was filmed during COVID, so we all have to be 2 meters apart from each other. On the show, they normally have dinner at each other's houses, right? And they do the bit where they go and snoop around the drawers and all that. But they didn't. We just went to this big country house that had a big enough table we could all sit on the other side of the room from each other. But yeah, it was good. Hopefully my banter's better than my cooking. But yeah, can see that calamity. All right, thanks very much for watching, guys. I appreciate you tuning in as ever. I'll probably stream tomorrow, but then I'm away for a few days. And my missus will be back after that, so I'll probably be streaming less frequently than I have been. But maybe I'll try and do a regular day a week or something like that, so that I keep it up, because I have enjoyed the streaming, and I think the sort of level of interaction is good for getting people to actually take part in things like Fast Action Network and so on, because it's a bit more like, it feels like a little community, right? You got people in the chat and so on, so we can you know, encourage each other towards doing more for animals all the time. I think that's really important, like I said in that video. All right, well, take care, you guys. I'll be back tomorrow, and yeah, look after yourselves. Cheers.